Hello, my name is Leo and this is the behind the scenes of the Thomas Tank's Toy Story video that I made. We'll be looking at the video out of sequence as I'll be showing it to you in the sequence that it was shot. And now to totally confuse you, the first scene I did was in my local Kmart, which is the beginning of the video. The boy in the video is my son and he's about 3.5 years old. And anyone out there who has made a video involving a 3-year-old will understand some of the difficulties which are involved. Let me see you. Where's Tom? Where's Thomas? Proof of this is the 10-minute video was derived from 2.5 hours of raw video footage. The video was shot around a basic idea. There was never a strict set of scenes or ideas or lines that were to be said in the video. All that was formulated later on, which to many people may sound a little bit backwards. But I'll explain the reason for this as we go along. The next scene that I shot was one of the scenes near the end of the video, and it's in my local charity shop. In this scene we see a very weathered and well-loved Thomas. And in the video I used 3 Thomas models to tell the story. The Thomas you see here was a brand new Thomas which I made look old by banging it around and putting a few custom touches to it which would become part of the story. Yeah, that's it, yep. Oh yeah, that's it, yep, you're looking around. You're thinking he's been loved. Love. One very important rule that I like to stick to is to have a video which has a beginning, a middle and an end. This scene in the charity shop could easily be the 3rd act in the video. And if I time compress the 3 separate sections the video is made of, the first section comprises of Thomas and the boy on the first day, and it goes up to the point where he goes to sleep with Thomas. The second section is a little bit more complex, and it's the adventures that Thomas has with the boy, and it could play out over a number of months. It may even be a year or so. It also lapses into the time where Thomas isn't such a favourite toy, and Thomas starts to find himself in some very unusual places. And in this final section of the video we find out that Thomas has a completely new destiny, and this is far grander than being thrown out in the bin and ending up at the rubbish dump. The next scene that I did was the Thomas the Tank unboxing scene. And I thought to myself, oh, this will be easy, this will be so easy, but no, we're dealing with a 3.5-year-old here, and I think I was trying to make it fun. I remember I was recording everything because I thought, well, there'll be a snippet here that I can use, and a snippet there that I can't, and I always knew in the back of my mind from all the video that I took, I'd just be snipping out the really golden bits that I wanted to use. Show me Tom again, go, show. Show me Tom again. So this unboxing shot was shot on the same day as that visit to Kmart where we unpegged Thomas a million times, and my son got quite bored with that. And I was hoping he was regenerated and rejuvenated to come and do a little bit more with Thomas in the unboxing scene that we're looking at now. And what was sort of funny is my son reboxed Thomas, and I thought, well, okay, I'll make that part of the video. That was never the plan. And Thomas ended up back in the box. And I thought, well, I'll run with that and we'll make it part of the video. And that's what I'm saying. Nothing was locked down. If I saw something that I could use, I would use it. Give Tom a kiss. Another one, give him another kiss. Give Tom a kiss. Give him a kiss. Give him another kiss, one more. And in a stupidly ambitious move, I tried to get in another shot of the video on the first day that I was making it. So in the morning we were at Kmart. Later that day we were opening up the Thomas at home, and then we had lunch and we were trying to feed Thomas a meat pie. And this is where I learned the lesson not to be too ambitious and achieve too much in one day. Even though my son loves Thomas, when we got up to the pie eating scene he'd had enough playing with Thomas for this day. And one little cheat I did here was when I was feeding Thomas and all you see is Thomas and the fork, it's actually me holding the fork. And hopefully I was able to take my own instructions. On the next day, and my son is all bright and shiny and ready to play with Thomas again, we did the bath scene. And this is possibly one of the easiest scenes that I did in the whole video, because it was all very freeform.
Yeah, and now you can up. It's catching all the bubbles.
Show it to me, show me bubbles. The next scene was Thomas playing out with all of his friends in a fairly randomly set up take and play rail yard. Some of his favourite play sets are incorporated here, and I think I had a sprinkling of Chuggington in there as well. And really, one thing I wanted to see was a scene where Thomas rams into Diesel 10. I was just going to strip in the words around what I see playing out. What was important was to get interaction between Thomas and Diesel 10, because this would play out again in a later scene. Okay, pick them up, kiss them. Go, go, go. Ready, steady, go. Go, Tom, go. Fast, go. Okay, push Diesel 10 into Thomas. Go, into Thomas. As simple as this scene looks, you ask any dad who tries to video his son playing with trains, it's actually very hard to get good framing and action that works in frame when you're playing out randomly with a 3-year-old. And bang! Okay, come and pick them up. Pick them up, take them away. Pick them up, that's it. Yeah! In just about every scene I did where my son is playing with Thomas, we always finished off with what I call the Thomas pick-up shot. And quite simply, this shot gives me the visuals to say, well, moving on to another scene. Pick him up. Come pick him up and run. Grab Tom. Grab him. And then there was the sleeping scene, and this was an important part of the video because it really defined the end of Act 1. We've just witnessed the joy that one little toy train has brought to one child, and I'm sure there are many parents and Thomas fans who can relate to this relationship. And up the end of this scene, Thomas goes to sleep and he does a little blink and his eyes close over, and that's just a very simple Photoshop trick where I used a still of Thomas. It's actually frozen video there, and then I have another still which has Thomas's cheeks which are put over his eyes. So I've cloned the cheek area over the eye area, if that makes any sense. It's actually a little trick that I've done in a number of other videos. And we all know that children love Play-Doh, my son certainly does, and all I had to do here was let my son play with Thomas. But then when I went to put the video together, I had to give Thomas's perspective on what was happening to him with the Play-Doh. And of course I could sneak in the old cloning jokes, and some people interpreted this as some strange message about Mad Bomber 2. Yep, go. Okay, take it off. Take it off.
I'm not. I'm cooking. Oh no.
This next scene is actually a very important one. It's a very short one in the video, and it's where Thomas, obviously he's just been through the Play-Doh, there's still Play-Doh on him. He's a little bit beaten up now. You can see there's paint chips on him. One of his front buffers has been rubbed off a bit. And he can see that there's another brand in Tidmouth Sheds. But in true classic Thomas style, he's very cheeky and he's very affirmative that he's the #1 brand. And it's also interesting that it's a scene where it's just Thomas and my son is not involved. Little does Thomas know there's quite a few more scenes like this later in the video. The next piece to the puzzle was the mysterious collector taking Thomas to his Toyota car, where you'll see some other items that this person has collected. And some people saw this scene as some sort of crossover scene to something that they saw in Toy Story, the film Toy Story. I can assure you there's no premeditated reason for this. I think people were just seeing stuff that they wanted to see. The next scene is the collector taking the box of Thomas's into his collector's den, and he's doing all the strange things that collectors might do to an item when they come into their collection. And all this is playing out near the end of the video, so it's the third act, and it's all very different to what you were seeing previously in the video. And in this part, that little Thomas that we've been focusing on in the whole video is still fairly fearful of his fate. He knows there are other Thomases around him, but he's not exactly sure of where he fits in. And because I've got this massive Thomas the Tank collection, it gave me this fantastic opportunity to use it as part of this video. You know, it's funny, I could have shot this video with many different alternate endings. I could have done an ending where Thomas just ends up at the tip and a giant bulldozer comes and runs over him. I could have done an ending where Thomas ends up in a children's orphanage where he's played with many children for years to come. I could have done an ending where Thomas ends up in the attic of a house in a box of toys and is forgotten for many, many years. I could have done an ending where the small boy who owned and loved Thomas buried him in a time capsule. But I chose an ending that I could do that I knew not many other people could pull off. Many people said to me it was a very sad end to a video. Considering the alternative endings I could have done, I believe this is a very joyous ending. If you were crying at the end of the video, they're actually tears of joy. And you may be wondering about the Thomas teardrop shot. Well, that was the very last thing I shot, and when we get to the end of this video, you will understand why I ended up shooting it last. And the next scene was painting the white around the running board on Thomas the tank. Remembering this video was shot out of sequence, that's why we're jumping around from something at the end to something near the middle. This was a great fun scene to do, and I'm sure there are many children out there who have owned a Thomas the Tank and have done this minor paint alteration. What's important about this scene is it defines the third look of Thomas in this video. So from here on in we see the Thomas with the white paint detailings, which over time show signs of being rubbed away. Remember, I used 3 Thomas the Tanks to cheat Thomas's aging in the video.
Paint, paint, paint.
And sure, when my son painted Thomas, the paint was going everywhere and Thomas was covered in white paint, but that didn't bother me at all. Because in this video, the dialogue didn't happen until I started editing the film, so this crazy over-the-top paint job could become part of the story. And maybe also you can see I do shoot a lot of different angles, I shoot wides, I shoot close-ups. And this is really important to do so you can compress time when you're editing, and it really aids in telling the story.
Okay, we're getting ready. Or that.
The next scene was a fun one as well. We went down to McDonald's with Thomas and we had him enjoying a McDonald's Happy Meal. Who out there has not gone out and taken Thomas with them on an excursion? I know my son's Thomas has been out on many excursions. And many people say, oh well, why did you call it a Krabby Patty? Well, the funny thing is when my son goes to McDonald's he calls cheeseburgers Krabby Patties. And the funny thing is he learned that from my daughter, who is his older sister. On the way home from McDonald's I was able to stop at the local skate park and get in another shot for the video. It was very rare that I got in 2 in one day. It was a whole lot of fun at the skate park with Thomas, and hopefully this scene demonstrates just how rough and tough the take and play Thomas is.
Up and over, go! Go! Whoa!
Be careful there.
Grab him and run!
Well, the next piece of the puzzle was where Thomas was playing around with the Hot Wheels vehicles, and in particular a toy on the wall called the Hot Wheels Power Tower. The Hot Wheels Power Tower is a fantastic toy, but unfortunately in Australia it was selling for up near $90 just before Christmas, and I paid way too much for this toy, I believe. After Christmas the toy price sunk down to around $40. But this scene was put in for a number of reasons, because there was a couple of brand crossovers that I wanted to have happen in this video, and also wanted to show that this boy, he's getting a little bit older in the story that is, and he's getting interested in other toys, and maybe Thomas isn't the big hit that he used to be when he was first in the house. I do like the Hot Wheels wall track system. It keeps toys up off the ground and stuck on the wall, and it's quite amazing. The thing actually does stay up there for some period of time and you can pull it off without damaging the walls. Anyway, I was able to get some Angry Bird jokes in on this scene, and maybe that's the only reason why it was there.
Don't look at me! Getting grabbed. Okay, go.
Oh, next scene, it was a fun one. We're out in the garden with our Thomas the Tank and our take and play track system, in particular the flexi track, which I needed to show the way my son plays with this, and I needed to show how versatile it is in the video. So what I did was I thought, well, let's recreate a section of one of the famous Thomas films, and it was from Misty Island Rescue. My son loves the Shake Shake Bridge scene in that video, so it was absolutely no trouble at all to recreate this in the garden. There was also a few other cryptic messages in this scene that some people interpreted slightly wrong, but hey, you can interpret it whichever way you want. But most importantly, we have the re-encounter with Diesel 10, which is something that we saw earlier in the video. And in a way, that's sort of saying, well, some things never change. At least not in my son's Thomas and Friends adventures.
Go. Quick, smash! Growl! Quick, quick, quick!
Messy.
Get Diesel 10 into Tom real fast. Go with Diesel 10. Rawr!
Oh,
Rawr! Fast! Rawr!
wow.
Fast! Rawr!
That one, that. There you. Stop. I want the river.
Ah yes, toys out in the rain. It always happens, doesn't it? But there's another little reason why this shot was in here, and a work colleague of mine had just passed away, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be nice to do a small tribute to him in this scene? And the sort of work that he did was he made fake rain. Maybe that's all I'm going to say about that. But there was one thing I had to do. I needed a little bit of overcast weather, because I think it always looks dodgy when you see rain falling when the sun's out. And this video was made during January and February of the Australian summer, so hey, it's fun to play in the rain, and my son was able to come out and have a bit of a splash in the water.
Wet.
It's all wet.
And when these scenes start to happen in the video, Thomas is finding himself in all sorts of different situations, and hopefully this is telling the story that there's a little bit of distance between him and the boy who once loved him so much.
That is the fake rain. So that's raining over there? Yeah.
How do you get that?
And it's not raining here.
Yeah.
They call that fake rain. Have you ever heard of fake rain before?
Yeah, morning I get back.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, this is becoming a very long video, and I'm really sorry for that, but I didn't want to break this behind the scenes video up because I think you need to see what went on as one hit. And there was a scene I did where Thomas is in with a bunch of toys, and there's an Astro Boy there as well. And the reason why I did this scene is when I was my son's age, and that's about 3.5 in this video, the sorts of things I used to watch was things like the original Astro Boy and another Japanese anime called Prince Planet. And in a very strange way, they had a huge effect over the things that I ended up liking later on in life. Another notable TV show that had a big effect on me was the TV show Thunderbirds, but that came along a little bit later, but my exposure to that TV show was happening maybe a few years after Astro Boy.
Keep coming. Keep coming.
Oh, the next scene was a difficult one, probably one of the most difficult in the whole video, and that's because it involved my son driving a remote controlled vehicle, and he had to sort of get to a certain position next to Thomas. And the point of this scene is, well, it's got to a point in Thomas's life where there are other bigger and better toys in the house that are attracting my son's attention. I never intended Thomas to be picked up by the scoop of this vehicle, but one of the takes, the tractor came along and it sort of scooped Thomas up. and in the end, like so many times in this video, I thought, well, that was a bit of a mistake, but hey, it looks sort of cool. This is one of the last scenes where you'll see my son in the video, and there was one other that I shot but it never made it onto the video, and we'll take a look at that after we review this nightmare of this RC, whatever it is, going past Thomas.
Okay, keep coming, walk all the way, don't stop, keep coming, don't stop, don't stop, go, keep walking, go, keep walking, keep going. Keep walking. Keep going, keep going. That's it. Keep going. Keep going. That's it. Go, yep, go. Keep going, keep going.
And there was this scene that I did which never made it onto the final video, and the very simple message in this scene, if it was in the video, would have been saying, well, you know, these days there's all these other distractions that children have rather than playing with real toys. How many children these days just sit at computer screens and iPads and whatever else and just watch toys online and don't actually play with toys? And maybe it could have been a prompt saying, well, the boy's getting a little bit older now, and playing with that little Thomas the Tank is something of the past. But as it stands, it became a deleted scene. And then there are a couple of very important scenes which really set up the changed relationship between Thomas and the boy, and the fact that a period of time has moved on since Thomas had been played with. There's a fair bit said in all this, there's a few little bits of comedy, but the tricky part with this is because nothing moving in a shot, there's no boy there, everything is being made up from basically very stationary scenes. The only thing I could do was to make different frame shots or move the camera. And you know what, it's funny, a lot of people, they came along and they said, oh, you've just ripped off the Toy Story, the Disney Toy Story idea in your video. Well, I do pay homage to Toy Story in the video. I think a lot of people, they watch part of the video, but they don't watch the part where the Toy Story bag appears. And you also have to remember, I'm not spending 90 minutes telling an elaborate story here. I'm compressing the story into 10 minutes. And what's really important about this video, I wanted it to show the absolute strength and might of the Thomas the Tank brand. And you know what, it'd actually be quite difficult to do another video like this with another toy and have that total connection that you can get with a little Thomas the Tank and little boy. I believe that's something which is fairly rare in the toy industry. And as I've learned from some of the YouTubers that I've got to know and many parents that speak to me on YouTube, that this bonding can go on for many, many years, well past a person's childhood. Many of the big fans of Thomas on YouTube are actually adults, and many of these people can really relate to the video that I made for them.
I'm now a centerpiece in an amazing collection of Thomas Tank toys.
It's funny when you edit something together and you come to an end piece, you think, well, how do you want something to finish? And it can be so important, and I had this finish which I thought, well, there was something missing. It just needed that little extra bit, and this is how the first edit finished.
And how his affection for me made me a really special engine. It's something I'll never forget.
But you know what? I thought I'm going to do something a little bit radical here. I'm going to put a very different ending to this video. And the big gamble was to have the crying Thomas as the final thing you see. And I think this very simple scene completely elevates the whole video.
I think back to the joy I brought to one child and how his affection for me made me a really special engine. It's something I'll never forget.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the behind the scenes of my Thomas Tank Toy Story video. It's a bit of a gamble because it's not a toy review, as boring as they are, but I'm hoping that the people who have the powers to pull these videos down can see what I've done here. And this is far more powerful than any toy review that I could ever pull off. Okay, that's it, and bye for now.